dirt road off a 2-lane past a shot-up county sign. Squeaking of a backyard screen door letting you know that it's
The Putnam Personalities podcast exists to highlight the good, the positive, and the inspirational in our community. This episode is not an endorsement of any political or religious ideology. This podcast is a simple interview to get to know our friends, neighbors, leaders, and colleagues on a more personal level. Sit back, grab some sweet tea, and enjoy today's interview.
like home to me.
We got Miss Brenda Bridges on here today, and I have not met you before. In fact, when you pulled in, I saw the sign in your car, so I assumed it was you. But thank you for coming on, and you've told me you've watched a couple or at least one of the podcasts, so thanks for being a viewer, and maybe catch a few more in your future. That's cool. I met a young lady at the fair this year, and she was running. She said she would be running, so I signed a ballot to have her put on. And that's really the first, I realized that there was a tax collector position becoming open. I went online, saw the candidates, reached out to all of y'all. I interviewed one of the opponents last week, and but across the street from our church here, where we do the recording, there's a big, huge Brenda Bridges sign. I see it every day, and it never really caught my attention until I'm like, oh. And then we've talked, and so now we're doing your interview. And we're not basically political. We're not real religious as well. But sometimes, obviously, you're running for office. It might get into any of those things. That's fine. But I'm not here to, dictate what you say and not say. But with that being said, thank you for coming on. And let's go ahead and start with little Brenda. Where did you grow up? And did you grow up here in the county, or did you transplant in? Or tell us a little bit about yourself in the past.
So I'm a transplant. So first, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah.
And for getting to know you. So I am a native Floridian. I was born at NAS Jax.
Nice.
My father was in the Navy, and I was the youngest of 3 children. And he was then transferred to Brunswick, Georgia. And being the youngest of the 3 kids, our family ended up settling there, and he traveled and finished out his career in the Navy. So I lived most of my life in South Georgia, and I met my late husband there. We have 2 beautiful children, and in 1988, we saw an ad on TV for beautiful Interlaken Lakes Estates. And we were intrigued by it, had a beautiful lake and some very nice homes, and showed some families in their boats. And so we decided we would load up and come down, and it was only a few hours away, and look around. We came down. We never quite found what we saw on TV, but what we did find, we truly loved. And my late husband was a visionary. He picked up a real estate magazine and ended up coming down a few times by himself, and came home one afternoon and said, guess what I bought? And he had bought a fish camp in
nice.
San Mateo. And he said, I just think it'd be neat if we could work together and raise our kids, and, the American dream, let's just take out. He had had several businesses of his own in the past. So we had 30 days to move. We moved to Putnam County, and both of our children were raised here, graduated from high school here. And so that business was very successful. There were some old cabins on the property that were actually built during the Depression when they couldn't get lumber.
Wow.
And they were built out of railroad cars.
Wow.
And we were young and energetic and thought we could rebuild them. And as we got into them, we found out that the termites had carried off most of the wood. So we ended up taking them down, and we used the foundations for RV sites. So we ended up with a 36-site RV park, restaurant, and marina.
Wow.
And so it was a labor of love. I had never been in the restaurant business before, but I love people. I love serving people. And so it became very second nature to me. My husband, being the visionary, once a business was up and going, he kind of lost interest. And so he, after being here for a little while, saw another opportunity, and so he purchased a piece of property that had a warehouse on it, and we had a paper and janitorial supply business there, Bridges Supply.
Oh, wow.
And so we served, it was kind of like a milk route. We served a lot of churches and businesses in Putnam County, a lot of people that couldn't meet the minimum to get on a large truck. And we broke case on most everything that was individually wrapped. So we had those businesses for many years, and they grew and they were successful. But I felt like I had a calling somewhere else, and I wanted to get back into serving the public. And so I decided that I was going to leave him with the businesses and find another opportunity to get back into serving. So I applied for a position with Putnam County in 2001, was hired, worked in planning and development for 11 years, and worked my way up from an entry-level position to the zoning administrator for the county. It was a very interesting job. I worked with permitting and supervised the permit specialist and the zoning techs, and was able to work with most all of the contractors in the county. And so that was a very interesting avenue for me. I learned a lot, loved that, but saw that there really wasn't anywhere else for me to go there. And in 2012, the previous tax collector, previous to Linda Myers, was retiring. That was the Honorable Ken Mahaffey.
Okay.
And he posted a position. I applied for it, and at the time there were 5 people running for office, and everybody thought I was crazy for taking a position where I didn't know who my boss was going to be. And so I took the approach that I, was okay. I trusted in myself and wanted to gamble on myself, and did. And I have been in the tax collector's office since 2012 with the Honorable Linda Myers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it all started out with a Navy brat. I'm just kidding.
Navy brat.
So where does that come from? Where does that terminology come from? Do you know?
So
would you classify as one?
Well, it's interesting. So anybody that's lived in a military home knows the sacrifices that are made. So our father was overseas quite a bit. He served on the U.S. Saratoga. Wow. My mother had the hard chore of raising 3 children, but she did an excellent job. And we traveled around when my father was stationed in the States. If he was in a different state, we would meet him halfway, and we camped and would spend quality time together. So I came from a very, what I would say, very regimented lifestyle in a military home.
Very structured.
Very structured. Dinner was served at 6 o'clock, and if you weren't there, you waited until the next meal. So it was interesting. Yeah. So I guess Navy brat's been around. That term's been around for a long time.
Right.
But yeah, it was definitely a way of life.
Did you do any traveling as a kid with the Navy at all, or pretty much you were pretty much home here?
Because I was the youngest, I did not. I have a brother that was born in Norfolk, Virginia, and one in Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So all Navy-based children.
So we like to go out to San Diego because that's where we have family, and we go to the Balboa Park quite a bit. So there's a Navy hospital out there, and it's called Balboa. So I was kind of wondering if you had been out there, but well, that's neat. So you grew up, and then I did an interview a few minutes ago, and so I feel like my brain is fried, so I apologize. But anyway, so you grew up, and then you mentioned a few things along the way that caught my attention. One was you mentioned your late husband, and I'm assuming your husband passed away.
He did.
How long ago was that?
He passed away in 2015. Okay. So he was diagnosed at an early age with congestive heart failure.
Sorry.
And not the things in life we choose, but all things in his time. And we were blessed with 10 years after he was diagnosed, and he was originally given about 6 months to live without a heart transplant. And so with the grace of God and a good medical team, he had 10 wonderful years. So
wow.
Yeah.
Have you remarried since?
I have not. I do have a partner.
Okay.
He is very kind. He was a good friend of my husband and I. We have uh, not taken the leap into marriage yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we wish you the best on that endeavor, and I'm sorry to hear about your husband.
Thank
So
you.
I know it's a hard thing to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the first business, you said that you had a fish camp. So
Uh-huh.
what is that all about? Like, how does that? Like, you had a little restaurant too.
We had a
So
restaurant.
explain a little bit more if you would, because I don't even know. I hear that. I've heard like Whitey's fish camp, things like that. I've heard about, but I don't know what that is. So explain to me what that is, if you don't mind.
So when we first moved here, the bass tournaments were very strong and very frequent in this county. And so the property that we purchased was 6 acres on the St. Johns River. So it had a full marina and a small little restaurant. So we served steaks and seafood, and we were the only oyster bar in the county at the time.
What was it called?
Half Shell. We named it Half Shell when we purchased it. And so we had the marina, so we rented out dock slips. We had a fueling station. So we got a lot of traffic from boats coming from Jacksonville going down to Silver Glen. Wow. We had the RV park. We had a lot of snowbirds that came in. We had a storage area. They would leave their RVs year-round. Some of them left them on site. Some wanted them stored, and then we would pull them out, put them on a site when they got ready to come back.
Interesting.
So we had the opportunity to meet a lot of people that way. My children thought we had a very large family when they were younger, because the people that stayed in the RV park that were here during the holidays came to our house for Thanksgiving
Uncle
and
Steve's
Christmas
back,
dinner.
right? Everybody has a name, right?
So we had an extended family, and I was raised with the belief there's always room for another person at your table, and I don't recall a holiday where there wasn't other people in our home.
Right. Was there anybody special that you can look back on and say, I'm sure Miss So and So? Do you remember anybody like that?
We had a couple that they actually lived in Green Cove Springs. He was retired Navy. They met when she was 15, and they married. They were older than we were, and they kept a boat at our marina, and they came down. They never took the boat out. They weren't interested in going fishing or riding. So it was a beautiful houseboat. It was their weekend condo. And so they came down and stayed on the houseboat, and they came in our restaurant. His name was Scotty, and her name was Nell. And they just became, family members. Their children they were grown. They would come down and visit, and we got to know them, and they spent holidays at our house as well.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have friends like that when they come around, they usually say, I have one friend, his name is Steve, and he goes, like, Uncle Steve's bringing candy. Hey, quit bringing the candy unless you bring some money for dentist bills as well. But anyway, that's funny. Well, that's cool. And then the paper business, it was actually, I've actually was talking to some about that today. This morning, literally, I was talking about that. I'm like, I worked in a lot of warehouse jobs, and I've heard that there's possibly a company in the area local that might be looking possibly to sell that does that. And I was telling the guy this morning, I'm like, I should look into doing that. Like, I might have to find a different type of income here soon just to kind of help with some things. So, I don't know. I'm just not sure. But anyway, that's so how did that go? I mean, is it something that you enjoyed being a part of, or is it a lot of work?
So I handled the books, the accounting, and I also did the sales calls. So we carried a wide variety of items, and it kind of morphed into more as we continued to grow. Having the restaurant as well, we had dealt with Beaver Street Foods out of Jacksonville. And what we saw, and come into a lot of the churches and businesses, they were looking for dispensers for hand towels and soaps and things like that. And so we were able to get dispensers at no cost, and then we put them in the businesses, and then stocked the paper products for them.
Smart.
Yeah, and then we had people that started inquiring about coffee services. So we ended up adding a coffee service, and because we were such a good customer with Beaver Street Foods, we met with them, and they provided us the coffee makers as long as we committed to buy all of our coffee products from them. And so we were able to get the Bun coffee makers. We went into businesses and put those in. And then we went in weekly and stocked the cups, the coffee, creamer, sugar, all of that. And so, like I said, we called it a milk route. We had vans and we had several employees. And as long as something was individually wrapped so that it was sealed, we would break it down. And we had a couple of vans that would deliver daily, 5 days a week.
That's
and
neat.
We were on call. That was pagers when we had pagers. So I had a pager on me 24 hours a day, and we would have people, janitorial crews that would be maybe working at the hospital or the college and needed more floor wax. Maybe they had misjudged. And so we'd get a page 10, 11 o'clock at night, and we lived right by our warehouse. So we would run up there, and we sold 55-gallon drums of floor wax and stripper.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
I remember a lot, not from here, but growing up, my dad did janitor work, and a lot of what you just said just brought all kinds of memories back. The beeper, that one there, I was driving a car with my friend Pat, who was an older man. He would teach our youth group once in a while. He became a friend of our family, and I had just gotten a beeper, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I still had that. I'm still picturing I'm driving in his car, and I got it on my side, and then all of a sudden, I got my first beep, and that started buzzing, and I freaked out. I'm like, pull over, and I'm slapping my hand. I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what it is, and I thought I had bee in my pants, and it was
the pager,
the pager going off. So I remember those days.
Yeah.
And then you start the I think there was some. Yeah, there was a lot of cheating that go along with that. You started learning numbers, and you could send messages without actually
without having to
someone call you back, and there was a lot of those.
Absolutely,
those were always fun. But well, that's neat. And then from there, you started working at the tax collector's office. So, what is it you enjoy about? Because your opponent, when she came on, I said for me, like in the Bible, the tax collectors, the people hated the tax collector. They wanted to I think there was Zacchaeus, there was Matthew, there were certain people in the Bible that were tax collectors, publicans, not Republicans. They called them publicans. Right? Not to get it confused, but with that being said, like, why do you want to be the most hated person in our county? And I know it's not, but so what do you working there now, and then even maybe getting that job later? What is it that you love about your job, or
the people? So it's serving. So even though the title is tax collector, the job is so much more than that. And our office is probably the most unique, and I think that's what intrigues me about it. So what a lot of people do not understand about the tax collector's office is that we get no money from the general revenue, from tax money, to operate our office.
Really?
Not one penny.
Really? I didn't know that.
And that's by design in the Constitution. So it is the separation of powers and duties. So in the state of Florida, the Board of County Commissioners set the millage, the property appraiser does the appraisal, and the tax collector collects. So it's to keep all of those three duties separate, and it's also a check and a balance. So in order for us to maintain that autonomy, we are a fee-based office, and that is by state statute as well. So all of the agencies that we represent, so I said we do more than just collect taxes.
Right.
So we represent all the executive branches of government. So the Department of Highway Safety, Department of Agriculture for concealed weapon permitting, Department of Health for birth certificates, titles, registrations, handicap placards, and the list goes on, and Florida Game and Fish for hunting and fishing licenses. So by statute, every one of those agencies that we represent, they decide on a fee that we receive for the work that we do, and that's how we're compensated for that work.
Okay.
And so with each transaction, that fee is attached, and then on the collection of taxes, there is a commission. We collect on behalf of every taxing authority in the county. So the town of Interlachen, city of Crescent City, town of Willaca, city of Palatka. So it goes on. And so in order for us to be paid for that work, there's a commission. And so it is that commission and those fees that make up the budget for the tax collector's office. So it's very likened to being the CEO of a business. You're basically self-employed.
Right.
Although we have very little latitude in the policies and procedures, so those are all set by statute as well. And
so you're not like negotiating fees or anything.
That's
all set.
Right. That's
Okay.
why it's set by statute. It's to be fair to every customer that comes in the door, every taxpayer, not only here but throughout the state. So you have 67 counties in the state of Florida, and you don't want one county treating their taxpayers differently than somewhere else.
Right.
And as agencies of the state as well, someone can come. If you live in Alachua County, you don't have to go to Alachua to get your driver's license.
Right.
You can go to any county and do that. And the only thing you have to do in the county that you live in is pay your property taxes.
Okay.
So we are very fortunate. We get to celebrate a lot of the milestones in people's lives. So from the issuance of a birth certificate to a first driver, to a hunting and fishing license, the purchase of a car, and the taxes on their property. So we touch everybody at some point.
Now, do you do
in our
death certificates too?
We do not issue death
Okay.
certificates, and currently, right now, we're actually not even able to issue birth certificates. There was some technical issues that the Department of Health has been dealing with, so we've had to send our customers. And we only do that in our Crescent City and Interlochen office because of the drive. In Palatka, we're very close to the Department of Health. So, but right now, that's all having to be done with the Department of Health, and that's statewide. That's not just Putnam County.
So I've heard this word. I'm not a political person. I've said
Right.
that almost every podcast. I'm not, and I probably should dive a little more and understand things. So what is, when you say the word millage, what does millage mean?
So the millage is the rate that the board sets. So taxes are based on the assessed value on your property.
Okay.
So they set a rate,
Okay.
and then that's the multiplier times your assessed value, and that's how they come up with your taxes.
Okay. For each individual property or house. Okay.
And for each specific category. So like the Board of County Commissioners has one for the tax for the county. City of Palatka has one. The school board has several. Water management. So there are several different millage rates. And those are on, you see those each year first on your trim notice that's mailed out by the property appraiser's office, and that's what your proposed taxes will be, and that's kind of the notice when they're going to start having public hearings.
Okay.
And then once those are adopted by all of those entities, then the final tax roll is certified to us by the property appraiser.
So nobody should be hating on you then.
So
it's not a job. I mean, like if somebody, okay, I can understand like going to a big city, because I've been through the nightmares of being in Chicago and buying a bus for our church and waiting to get through that process, and and you like there's 100 people in front of you and 5 people, so there is that. But the truth is, a lot of this, like, you don't control our the amount of taxes we're paying.
No.
You're basically controlling the office. You're trying to make a transition smooth for someone in the community that needs to take care of something they have to do anyway. And your job is basically to make it as smooth as possible for them.
Right. So we're not a state office and we're not a county office. We're kind of in between. So you have the state at one level, the county, and then the public, and we're kind of in the middle. So we serve as that contact for state and local,
right?
So that we can bring those services locally here to our county.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of times, I think we all have to realize that, because even going to I don't know, I guess I can think of a million illustrations, but one is you're going to the grocery store and you're buying something, that poor kid working behind the cash register doesn't control the prices of lettuce.
Right.
It went up. She has no control over that. And so to yell and fuss at her, it doesn't do it. It makes you look immature, right? But the same thing, like going in, this is a personal, I don't know if I've gotten over this one yet, but we bought a van in Orlando and came back, and then something was written wrongly, and
On the title.
yeah, and instead of just letting us, cross it out, initial it, or whatever,
Yeah.
or something wasn't written in there, and I brought it in, they're like, so I had to go all the way back to Orlando and have a bill of sale. And at the time, I was pretty frustrated that lady behind the counter. But the truth is, she doesn't control the policy. Yeah. It's her job to say, look, this is the policy. You got to do it right. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of maturing, is knowing those things.
And I think when people understand that us getting that title right is what mm-hmm. protects your asset.
Right.
And that's what we're charged to do, is to
that's
make
important.
sure.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, that is important.
We are charged with protecting those assets. Basically, that's what our job comes down to.
Right.
And I know it's very technical in nature, and so we've worked really hard to make sure we can explain why we do the things that we do. And after we process those titles, what a lot of people don't realize, they don't stay here in Putnam County. We're working on behalf of Department of Highway Safety. Mm-hmm. Those titles are sent to Tallahassee, right. and they review them. So if it's inaccurate when we send it, it could create an issue where you might be driving a vehicle that wasn't legally done and could put you in a liable situation. Oh. So it's important for us to get it right.
Okay, let's see. That's really good to know. Yep. I'm glad I asked that question and vented a little bit, but got that off my chest. I feel better now. Mm-hmm. But something else you were talking about. I'm having this brain freeze today. I don't know what it is. It happened in my last interview too.
It's the weather.
I'm thinking of things that you're saying when you're talking, and then I'm like, and then it just won't come out. But let me think real quick here. Let's see. What did we talk about? All that. That's what I was thinking about. Okay, so a person going in and getting their driver's license. Mm-hmm. So do all the people at the counter, do they all have the blessed experience to ride along with someone trying to earn their license, or are there only certain people qualified to do that?
So every single person that works on the Department of Motorist side of the house is trained to do the road exam.
Okay.
So what a lot of people, it does take us a little while to do that because we do so many different things. And there's a lot of training involved.
And that's why there's scheduling, obviously. You can't just pop in and say, I want to go for a road test.
Well, and it's also to make sure that we can get everybody taken care of. And we have a timeline that we have to stop processing driver's license at the end of the day. So it is for organization and structure and to help us with the workload. So we have some employees that have only been with us maybe 4 or 5 months. So we do not believe in baptism by fire.
Right.
So we train them in one item at a time. And so we start out with like property taxes and registration renewals. And those queuing systems that we use in our offices when you first check in the office, we track what type of transaction you're going to complete, what you're there to do. And if there's somebody that can only do 2 or 3 of those things, if their training's only gotten them there so far,
right,
that's all they pull. So you're not being sent to one person and then have to move around.
Right, gotcha.
But eventually, everybody is trained
cross-trained
for every single. Mm-hmm.
That's good. So you've had your fair share of failures and what's the word, awarding the license to a young person, I'm assuming.
So
have you ever been in a position where I'm being cynical now, but if you ever get anybody a license, just say, here's your license, don't ever come back again.
No.
I'm kidding. We have 3 that have their license. One is working on hers. I'm joking through this because one of my kids, I'm like, how did she get her test? And I said, I know what it is. They're like, just take your license, don't ever come back in. And she's the one that's proven to be the most reckless of our drivers. I'm like, how did she get her test?
Right.
So I think the instructor was just a little nervous that day and just wanted to get over with it. No, I'm kidding. But you were going to say something. I interrupted you, but go ahead.
So it's interesting. When I first went to the tax collector's office, I remember one of the employees asking me, she said, why would you leave planning and development and come here? And I said, I don't understand what you mean. And she said, the customers are horrible. And I said, No, the customers aren't horrible. I said they just don't understand.
Right.
I said work in code enforcement or with building permits
It's
or
probably
in
just as
zoning
difficult.
where you're
Yeah.
telling people what they can and where they can build on their property. So I even in those experiences, I never saw a customer as being
A nuisance.
bad
Yeah.
or a nuisance. I saw them as not understanding, and so
Right.
our job is to help them understand all of those technical nuances to get them where they want to be. And hopefully, what we've done over the past 12 years is created a culture with our staff. So I think that Linda Myers as the tax collector and myself having a private business experience brought in a different view to customer service.
Okay.
And so we want to make sure, and what we tell our staff is that you're responsible for, sometimes you have to be an investigator. So people are nervous because
Right.
they see us as a government entity.
Mm-hmm.
And so they think if they tell you too much, you know,
Right. I understand.
so we have to be able to ask questions
Mm-hmm.
to find out exactly where you want to get. And maybe we can't get you exactly where you want to go, but then it's our job to offer you alternatives and say, well, you know, I can't do this and here's why, but I can get you here. And so you help the customer understand.
Yeah, customer service across the board, like any industry, is
Uh-huh.
lost.
Yeah.
It is so difficult nowadays to find any, and it's kind of reciprocal because I was in Chattanooga a couple months ago for a meeting and walked into forgot my toothbrush and toothpaste. I walk in the morning, 7 o'clock, trying really talk, and the lady's like, "Good morning," and I'm like, "Good morning," and then it just my good morning was pleasant to her because she says, "You know, how many people just don't even say anything back anymore," and it's sad how those personal relationships are pretty much almost ways of the past, and I think I do air conditioning parts and stuff, and I'll walk into there's a ply house sometimes, and I'll stand there for 10 minutes, and I won't say, hey, nobody will say I'll be with you in a minute or nothing. They'll just like totally ignore you, and it's just I hate that. Like personally, I'm very people oriented, so yeah.
Yeah. So our office, we refer to it as frontline. So we are frontline to the customer,
Right.
and so it is about customer service and that contact. Our staff is wonderful. They love people, and you know, if you're in that line of business, and when we interview people for those positions, we try to make sure that we paint a picture that they're truly going to understand
Right.
what we do, and they do. And when they come in, you know, they'll come back to me later and they'll say, you know, you told me when I interviewed that it would take about 2 years before I was fully trained, and I thought maybe you were crazy. And she said, but you're right. It does take that long, and it's because we do so many different things,
Right.
and because so many transactions are very unique.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has purchased from the same person, or
Right.
maybe somebody had a vehicle that they bought but they never titled it in their name. So there are a lot of nuances that make them each transaction a little bit different.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what does Brenda Bridges do for her hobbies? What do you do? Anything fun?
So my fun is in service as well. So I am a proud Rotarian.
Okay.
I've been a member of the Palatka Sunrise Rotary Club. So we participate in a lot of local community activities and internationally, globally. Rotary does a lot of work for different items like potable water, medicine. So Rotary partnered with Bill Gates many years ago.
Okay.
And one of our biggest campaigns is the End Polio campaign. And the last numbers I saw, we were within 20 cases of eradicating polio. And so you'll see us doing different fundraisers. We go into the schools. We do a project that we call Heart and Soul. We buy shoes and socks and go into the schools and help children that are in need of a pair of shoes.
Soul, I get it. Shoes. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
And we do scholarships. We paid for the walk-in cooler and freezer at the Bread of Life. And
Okay,
then
nice.
most recently, in the past 2 years, we put a pavilion there so that the clients coming in had a place to sit and enjoy their meal.
Nice.
So I believe in our Rotary motto, and that is service above self. So that's my fun.
Okay.
I also have some beautiful grandchildren in this county that I'm able to spend
Great.
time with. And so on the weekends, either I'm babysitting so that mom and dad can have a night out, or just going over to play. So I do that, and then also help with a few other local organizations. I currently sit as the president of the board of directors for the Lee Conley House for the domestic violence shelter.
Great.
So I stay
Awesome.
busy in activities in our county as well.
Very good. So I haven't asked this a whole lot. I actually started asking this question a lot, and I like this question. I want to get back to asking this quite a bit. There's two of them, but one of them is this: is there anything in your life, or has there ever been anything in your life that you say this was definitely an answer to prayer, or you would say that it was definitely a miracle? Anything you can think of?
So I think life itself is a miracle.
Okay.
I am a believer that we are put where we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be there, and that everything that we do is for a reason. Mm-hmm. And so I try to teach that philosophy to my children and remind them that, you know, good and bad in life all comes with a lesson. Mm-hmm. And we should never regret any of the bad times, and we learn from them and we move on. So miracles in life, I would say, are my two children. And every day is a blessing, you know.
Are you a reader?
I do, when I have time, when I'm not running around.
So
I do
like
enjoy reading.
I like books. They got one over there. It's a gentleman that lives in our community that was in Vietnam. He was an engineer, and I'm reading a story about him. The book is called Fire in the Hole, and so I'm reading that book right now. But so with that being said, is there a book that you've read recently that you'd recommend, or that you would say is or what are you reading now? Do you have anything on your?
I am not reading one right now, just because I've been so busy between the campaign and working full time. I also live on acreage, so I maintain.
Stay busy doing that. Huh?
So I love mowing. I like being outdoors. I can see the sky and see the birds and the squirrels, and I have fox and turkeys that run on my property. Nice. So I just enjoy seeing.
Well, don't tell anybody this, but this is between me and you, all right? No one else can hear this. Okay. But I actually like mowing too.
Yeah.
I have an older man in my church. He's 90, and he's like, you know, I have mentioned a few times I don't mind mowing, but one, I would feel weird, you know, having him here mowing. Not that he can't, but just, you know, I feel like he deserves more dignity than that. Not that mowing's beyond any, you know what I mean? It's not that, but it's almost like a break for me. It gives me a chance to sit, relax, think, enjoy the weather,
and clear your mind.
Yeah, and get a tan on my legs.
Exactly.
And my feet. I've actually mowed barefoot under Island barefoot. I'm like, I took my socks. I'm like, man, my feet are getting white. So the other day I mowed barefoot, my feet hanging off the end. Like, and now these puppies are starting to look a little tan again. But anyway, it's so weird. But anyway, at the end of every discussion, if you don't, that's fine. But anything I've asked you, you have the opportunity to ask me. This is not a gotcha type of thing. It's more or less just a simple conversation. But anything that you'd like to ask me at the end? If not, it's no big deal. But it's up to you.
So tell me how you came to Putnam County.
All right. Now I have to start this. I have shared this the last 4 interviews. So I want to say is go back and listen to episode number. I'm kidding. Actually, I love that question because I know I'm here for a reason. You know, a lot of people move because they get like a job offer or they just want to get away from where they're at. But I just knew that when I came, episode 1, I technically kind of give the answer a little better, a little more in detail. It's just me talking. But what happened is, without getting into everything, we were working at a church in Hudson, and my wife had won a trip to. We had different places we could have gone, and we picked Yellowstone.
Uh-huh.
So we went to Yellowstone, and when we got back from Yellowstone, it was like, it's kind of like when you were saying you were working at a certain place, but you just felt like you needed to do something else.
Uh-huh.
I was at this church working at youth, and I loved it. Like these kids, I mean, these kids really needed someone, and so they had my heart. But for some reason, when I came back, it was like that was pulled away from me, and I can't explain it. But it just that desire, like I love those kids. A lot of them I still talk to, but the desire of being there was gone. I can't explain. It was like it was pulled away from me, and I wasn't settled with. Also, I wasn't settled with life. Like, all right, what do I do? And we weren't gonna. I told my kids. I don't think I've said this publicly, not on a podcast. So I told my kids. I said we're gonna leave the church we're at. It's a small little country church. I said we're gonna look for a church that's bigger. My kids were moving into the youth department, so I didn't want to be their dad and their youth director. I wanted to just be their dad. So we're gonna look for a church. You guys can join a choir, be in a big youth group, blah blah blah. And that was my goal. And so my heart was removed from being there. And I just started to pray that God would lead me to doors I never knew existed. Like I wasn't looking to be in a position. I honestly didn't care about position. I just wanted my kids to have a good, healthy church environment as well. And so I had a job that I absolutely loved. I mean, some days wish I was still there. I loved it. But out of the blue, we came back from Yellowstone, and some guy calls me, a friend I had, and he's like, hey, have you ever thought about pastoring? And I'm like, no, like absolutely not, because I had lived in a pastor's home. I've been through all this, and I didn't want nothing to do with it, honestly. But when I hung up the phone, it was like I feel like God literally. You remember the old movie with Bill Cosby where he reaches across the phone and he grabs? I don't know if you remember that, but I can't remember the name of the movie. But he reaches through the phone, he grabs like his daughter's boyfriend or something, like chokes him or something. Anyway, I almost felt like that was God, like reach across, like saying, "You knucklehead, you're praying a specific prayer and I'm answering it, and then you're like totally abandoning me." That's how I literally felt. Like God was like, literally slapped me on the head, like, "What are you thinking?" I hung up the phone, and that's exactly how I felt. And I was like, so I called the man. His name is Ledford. I called him back the next day. I said, "All right, here's the deal." I said, "If God would lead me to be a pastor, I would do it, but it's really not my desire at all." And so he kind of shut the conversation was shut down. But over the next couple of weeks, I kind of like, why did he ask me that question? So I called him. I said, "Why did you?" He said, "Well, there's a church up in Hollister. It's a small church." He said his father-in-law was asked to kind of come over and just fill in until they found somebody. I said, "Well, tell your father-in-law that if they need me, I'll come in 1 week and fill in." And so sure enough, it was like July 4th or the week after July 4th, I got a call, and a man here at the church, a 90-year-old man, Mr. Angstad, called. He said, "Hey, would you come and fill in for us next week?" I said, "Sure." And so I just came in to fill in. And that week, I literally bought a suit coat because I don't wear suits. And I shaved my beard because I didn't know how I wanted to, not that I was trying to be something I wasn't. I wanted to be respectful because I didn't know the people. I didn't know the territory. So some people, for some reason, are offended by facial hair. I don't know why. Anyway, so I went ahead and shaved it all, and I got and I came, and they asked me to come back the next week. And I said, and I jokingly said, under one condition. I said, "Do I have to wear a suit coat?" Because I was so uncomfortable. And Mr. Angstad said, "Our last pastor didn't wear socks." And I don't know if he was joking or not. So he's like, "We don't care about a suit coat." I said, "Okay." So I literally back Monday, returned my suit coat back. I returned it, kept the receipt, returned it, and then I've been here. After 7 weeks, they asked our family to stay, and we've been here ever since. So we've been here starting our 12th year. So it's a long story, and there's probably a little bit more involved, but it's just. But I know that I was brought here for a reason. I have no idea why. Like honestly, our church has grown. We came here, there were 7 members. We have 40, 50 now, but it's not like we're booming at the. We're not busting at the seams. We're not a huge church, but I am confident that up to this point, this is where I'm supposed to be, and I have no doubt about it. So, and I don't hate it. I wish sometimes I was doing something else because I think we all go through that when we get frustrated. But I always remind myself. Somebody said one time, never. Let me see. Never. Something in doubt. I can't remember how it goes. Anyway, never. When you know you've arrived somewhere by faith, don't just walk away in your times. And that's not the right wording, but don't walk away when you have doubts. And every time I have a doubt or a frustration, I go right back to my story, and I can give you specific details that I said, I know this is where God's bringing me. And so there are times, don't remove in doubt what, you did by faith, something like that. But anyway, so there's times that I wish I could walk away because it does get, in my opinion, strenuous. I have a grandkid now, but he lives away, and it's like, I want to be with my kids, and so I want to feel those two little teeth that are popping in. I can't do that. I'm seeing pictures, But anyway, long answer, but that's pretty much it. But I know God brought me here.
That's right.
And yeah, I'm confident of that. So, does that answer your question?
It does.
It was long, I know.
It does. No, it was.
But
a good
there's
answer.
so much more. But it's just I try to shorten it every time, so it doesn't always sound so redundant. But anyway, so if for some reason Miss Brenda Bridges doesn't win the election, which who knows, that's in God's hands. I'm assuming you still have a job. That's what you're doing.
So.
Or do you have?
Yes or no? So so Florida's an at-will state.
Okay.
Which means you can be fired for no reason,
right?
Bad reason,
Yeah.
So that depends. So if I was not elected and one of the other candidates came in, that would be a conversation that we would have to have. I intend to serve Putnam County, whether it be in that position or not. I hope it's in that position. I love the team there. We have an amazing team that works very hard to do a good job for the citizens. I believe that as an experienced candidate, I bring a lot to the table and want to continue to serve, hopefully, in that office.
Great. Well, we'll be praying for you and your endeavors. And as always, I don't pull sides on any of this.
Right,
I tried. Probably that last question was probably one I shouldn't have asked because it probably got a little more political, and I shouldn't even ask that. But I try to be very just across the board, just like to have that conversation. So you've been very gracious.
Thank you.
I'm thankful you got to come on today with us or with me and talk. And just want to say God bless and best luck to you.
You as well. Thank you.